that? Oh. Well, this looks like a sticky situation.
So tonight we're going to do our second lesson. We're going to do our second lesson in this series that we're calling Sticky Situations. And we're looking at kind of different scenarios that maybe you find yourselves in as high school students, right? So tonight we're going to look at this idea of how do you make big decisions. Jake, get off your phone. How do you make big decisions? Like, should I call Jake out or should I not? I just made a split decision and decided I was going to. But if you know me in my normal everyday life, I have a pretty hard time making decisions. You can ask the people around here, one of the worst days of the year for me is like around my birthday because they make me decide where we go eat lunch. And it's just so hard to decide where I'm going to make everyone go eat lunch that day. Or if you talk to Carlisle, like the constant battle between us is who's going to decide where we eat dinner or what we eat for dinner. And it's usually a race for, I'm just not deciding, I'm not that hungry. And as soon as you say that phrase, then the other person has to decide. Because I really, really just don't like making big decisions. Like, it's hard to do that. Does anyone else resonate with this? Like, it is hard to make decisions. So, if it's hard enough to make a decision like, where the heck are we going to go eat dinner? Or what exactly should I wear to school today? How do we make the big decisions that we come up against? What are some of the biggest decisions you guys are facing right now as high schoolers? Yeah, seniors, college. Right now, how many of you are working on the Common App or whatever that is, right? You have to decide who's going to be your recommendation. You know, is it going to be me, Lee, or Derek? You know, I don't know. You haven't asked anyone yet. What teachers are you going to ask? What other big decisions are you making right now? How many of you are working a job right now to make extra money? How many of you, that's a big decision on whether you're going to do that or not, right? So, as a kid, I was kind of looking for answers on how to make decisions. And there was this thing that my dad told me about. And I was super excited about it because I was like, once this thing, I knew that I was probably going to get this thing for Christmas. I was like, once I get this thing for Christmas, I'm going to have all the answers to everything. I was like, when I'm worried about like who's going to win the Red Sox game, I can figure it out ahead of time. When I'm wondering about like what age I'm going to get married, not that I would think about that as a young child, but if I could ask this thing this question, or I could ask it like, what is mom going to make for dinner tonight? And this thing would always know the answer, and I would never necessarily have to make a decision for myself because this thing would tell me. And then I got a Magic 8 Ball for Christmas, and it completely let me down. Because, like, more often than not, I got that, like, it's decidedly so, or something like one of the really weird phrases that it says, like, most likely not. You know, am I going to play in the NFL? No. You know, it didn't really give me the full answers that I was looking for. Yeah, it was just flat out no. It wasn't even like the halfway positive one. It was just like no chance. Fast forward a few years, and I'm a senior in college. And if you're a senior in college, comes a lot of the big decisions that you make your senior year of high school as well, except for at the time they feel even crazier because it's questions like, should I go into the workforce already? Should I just go try to find a job, or should I go to grad school? And if I'm going to go to grad school, which one should I go to? Like, should I take a year off? And like really the big question of what do I want to do with my life? That's a pretty big decision and question as well. And so I remember sitting, it was kind of fall semester of my senior year, and I'd spent all of this time, and I knew ultimately that more than likely what I was going to do was go to seminary. And at my school, I had talked to professors and other people that I've been studying religion with, and they were pushing me on all different ways of what I needed to do. And it came time that really I was just going to have to start making a decision on what applications I was going to have to start. And so I remember I was sitting at my desk, and yeah, applications used to, like, you wrote on them was the way I did it. It was weird, it's crazy. But I was writing on this application as carefully as I could. And I was writing these applications to these phenomenal seminaries that people had told and encouraged me to go to, and that I was kind of feeling like, man, it would be, how awesome would it look if I went to Princeton Theological? Or how awesome would it be if I went to Duke or to Asbury or one of these crazy seminaries? And I remember every time I started one of these applications, like I couldn't get through it. There was something weird going on there where, like, for whatever reason, like, I'd write my name and address and, like, start writing the first essay and, like, a couple of the other things, and I'd kind of just set it aside, like, I don't really want to work on this now. And until I had about a stack of about 4 or 5 different applications to all these different great seminaries. And I just couldn't decide which one I wanted to finish, or if I wanted to finish any of them. And I remember just sitting there and wrestling with, what the heck am I going to do? Which one of these is my future? And now, if you're like me, one of the things that you do when you have to make a big decision is you go and ask somebody, right? Mom or dad or friend. And I remember asking some people, and every time I've asked people about making a big decision, 2 of the Bible verses that they've always pushed me towards, there's 2 in Matthew in chapters 6 and 7. That's almost the same little bit of teaching right there that Jesus does. And there's 2 kind of sayings that that Jesus gives us there. The first one is in Matthew 6, and it says, "Therefore I say to you, don't be anxious or don't worry about your life, what you'll eat or what you'll drink or about what you'll wear. Don't worry about any of those things. Do not be anxious." And I read that passage as a person, and I'm like, have you met me? You want me to not be anxious about this. You want me to just trust and not worry. Don't worry about tomorrow. Let God worry about tomorrow. And I'm looking at that, I'm like, really, you think I just shouldn't worry about it? I should just let it sit there, like let it lie? Don't do anything? And so I read that one, and I've been given that one, and I'm like, okay, just sit back and trust and wait. Don't be anxious, whatever that means to not be anxious. I don't think I've ever not been anxious in my life. And so you read that one. And then down in Matthew 7, Jesus gives us this one and says, "Ask and you will receive, search and you will find, knock and the door will be open to you. For everyone who asks receives, whoever seeks finds, and everyone who knocks, the door is open." So I read these 2 passages, and I'm like, all right, one makes it really sound like I just need to sit back and relax and not be anxious and not worry about anything and maybe just kind of do nothing. And the other one sounds like all these very active verbs, right? Go knock, ask, seek, do the things, and then you will find the answer that you are seeking. I mean, it says it right there. Seek and you will find. And I remember sitting there at my desk and thinking about passages like that and saying, I really feel like I've been seeking. I've sat down with people and talked about their seminaries, and I've started these applications, and I don't feel like I'm finding the answer. And for me, I just kept resting back and saying, all right, I'm going to try not to worry about it. I'm going to try not to be anxious, but I'm going to keep pursuing ways to find out about it. See, I think one of the problems that we have is when we're making some of these big decisions is we want the answers that we get, we want them to happen in our terms and on our time frames, right? Like we read things like ask, knock, seek, or whatever the ask, seek, knock, and we think instantly we're going to find the answer that we want. That as soon as I start saying, hey, God, I'd love to know where I should go to seminary, or even if you're as anxious as I am sometimes at about 9:30 and you're like, God, where should we eat lunch today? You expect the answer pretty quickly. but it doesn't always happen necessarily on our time frame. I think that truly when we have these big decisions, what we really need to start doing is resting somewhere in the midst of those two passages. This very active and this very just rest in the fact that God has you. Which they feel contrary to each other, but I really think that they're not. And here's why. So the resting and don't be anxious, don't worry about tomorrow, let tomorrow worry about itself, God will provide, is an active thing because you are actively resting in the idea that God has control over your life. And if you think it's not an active thing to rest in that, that's one of the hardest things that I've had to do in my life is actively just say, I'm not going to worry about this, but I'm going to rest in the idea that God has it under control. That is hard, and that is an active thing to do. And the other one, ask, seek, and knock. Truly, these three words all come from a Jewish tradition of to petition God for something or to bring something to God. And we think a lot of times that and so they all kind of root back to a form of prayer in the Jewish Hebrew tradition. That word was hard for a second. That it all roots back to a prayer tradition in the Hebrew culture. And so it's saying to bring these things to God. How can I give these things? How can I take and actively give them to God? And here's what we have to remember sometimes when we talk about giving these big decisions to God. That we are not informing God or making a request to God, but rather we are making a statement about the relationship that we have with God. God already knows. God already knows the plans that God has for us. We're just making a statement that, God, I don't want this decision to be made without you. I need your help to make this decision. So for me, I kept sitting there. And I kept slowly working on applications. And I'd pray about it. And slowly, I started to ask other people to pray for me as well. And as I prayed about it, and I knew other people were praying about it, I just stayed and rested in the idea that God was going to take care of it. And that if I kept petitioning and taking these things to God and resting in the idea that God had it, that the answer would come. And eventually I got a phone call from my former youth minister that said, hey, I'm starting this school. And I'd like you to come to it. You'll be one of the first graduates of it, but it's going to give you a seminary education. And I asked a few questions, and I said, okay. And for me, I understood in a moment why I had so much unrest about filling out all of these applications. That even though it was really, really hard, that I had to listen to those. That I had to every time that I started one and I couldn't finish it, there was a reason why I was doing that. There was a reason why I was having that distrust. So I kind of want to close with a little bit different of a story. And this is what I think that you can do for each other in big decisions. And the answer on all of this, how do you make big decisions? There's no great answer. That's the moral of my story tonight, except for resting in God. And I think praying for each other. You never know the impact that you can have to just pray for each other. So I want to encourage y'all to do that this week, that the big decisions that you have in your life going on right now, that you would pray, begin to pray to God, that you would give those things to God, and that you would listen even more. But two, who's one person in your life that you would trust saying, hey, will you pray for me in this one thing? I have to make this big decision, and I really just don't know what to do. Will you pray for me about this? Give it to God and ask someone to be in prayer for you. Let me pray for y'all before y'all head to your small groups. Gracious and loving God, making big decisions is hard.